Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Stories of Faith as we celebrate an incredible milestone, the 110th anniversary of the Iglesia Cristo Church of Christ. Over the years, countless individuals from all walks of life have embarked on unique and inspiring journeys, each one led by faith and the desire to find where God was guiding them. I'm Brother Ray Del Rosario, and join us as we celebrate these extraordinary journeys and the enduring legacy of the Church of Christ. In this special episode, we will share the remarkable stories of those whose paths began in diverse and unexpected ways, yet all converged in their unwavering commitment to follow God's lead. Now we turn to the remarkable story of Peter. Peter's journey is one of incredible endurance and resilience. He escaped severe abuse during his formative and teen years by signing up for the U.S. Army at just 17 years old. Sent into combat during the Vietnam War, Peter faced unimaginable horrors. The trauma from his childhood and his experience in the war led him to lose his faith in God.
My father was physically abusive, horrifyingly abusive, for the smallest infraction. And my mother enabled him by covering up the bruises so that we could go to school the next day. And I couldn't understand how there was a God that would allow that to happen to me. I grew up angry and hating God and hating my parents and wanting to leave Hawaii as soon as possible. My out was the military, and was shipped off to Vietnam, and many of them on the wall are dead as a result of commands I gave. I had to put somebody on point on a search and destroy mission, and the point man got killed. I was only 19. I went from severe trauma to extreme trauma, and my PTSD runs deep. I couldn't make sense of this God that treated me so poorly and handed me this bad hand of cards. I rejected God. He had no place in my life. And I had my fair share of successes. I never gave God credit. I never thought God was real. I didn't know about INC, so my first introduction to INC was Teresita slipping me the pasugo and asking me to, read it. You might find it interesting. So, it stayed in my dresser drawer for, a long time, unread. My best friend is Vincent Morales, and I tell the story about having volunteered at the VA hospital, and there was a chapel in the hospital, and a Catholic priest would come every Ash Wednesday and do the ashes on the Catholics. For the whole ward was Filipino healthcare workers, and they would all take the ashes on the forehead, but not Vince. And now I realize that they are in the INC community. And so it helped me get closer to making the decision and to thinking about accepting INC in my life. I needed to learn about the church and whether or not I could reconcile the differences, the vast differences that I had coming from no God to one filled with God, one absolute God, the true church. I came from that the belief of the Trinity, in the Catholic faith. Father, Son, Holy Ghost.
Was that surprising to you when that lesson was brought up?
No, that the Bible backs up the reality of Jesus Christ being a man. I asked questions every lesson, challenging the doctrine, challenging what I was hearing. You know, I accept Brother Felix and his being the messenger and the reemergence of the Church of Christ. I accept all that. Learning about the Church of Christ, that their beliefs are, strong, that they back up their beliefs with clear thinking and reason. While I was going through Bible study, I got cancer. I struggled through Bible lesson. I went through surgery. I had chemotherapy and radiation. Painful. But all the while going through cancer and learning about the faith and going to worship services and meeting the people I've met and praying, learning to pray. You know what I did fear? You know what happens? Judgment Day happens. And I'm still scrambling to learn the faith. But I came through that. And maybe that was God's will. God is the greatest presence in my life. Becoming baptized is the single best decision I ever made in my life. I think of myself as having been in the darkness all my life. And that accepting God is walking in His light.
Just like Peter, our next story also had a painful childhood. Growing up with an abusive, alcoholic father, Mary's home life was far from easy. Despite attending Mass in her younger years, she never truly believed in what she was practicing. To cope with her pain, she turned to alcohol, finding temporary solace in drinking and partying. Join us as we explore Mary's powerful journey from despair to faith and the incredible impact it has had on her life.
The first time that I can remember my dad hitting me, 6 or 7, it was over something that was missing from the kitchen, and nobody wanted to confess that they took it. In my childhood, I did question God's existence, because if I was this miserable in my family, going to church every Sunday and receiving all the sacraments and doing what I was supposed to be doing in church, I don't understand how I could be so miserable in life. When I was in the Catholic Church, we did have questions like during catechism or stuff like that, but they were never answered. It was just, it's a mystery, and I'm supposed to trust that they're giving me the information that I need. I was first introduced to the church through my husband, Rashad. He was doing Bible studies at the time, and I honestly wanted no part. I told him to never mention the church and to never mention the Bible to me ever again. I correlated everything with the Bible to Catholicism at the time. And I was not practicing anything at that time. I had completely left God out of my life. One night, I partied with my friends, and I decided that I wanted to go home. And I decided to get in my car and drive, and a police officer pulled me over, and I got arrested for DUI. During my DUI charge, I had to spend some time in prison as a result. It was only 3 days, which is not a lot, but 3 days was enough. 3 days was enough to make me think. And that's when I started talking about the Bible again. When I finally told Rashad that I was interested in doing the Bible studies, I believe he started crying. It was on the way home from jail, and I told him that he had to call Brother Mike immediately, and we had to set them up. In the first Bible lesson, I heard things I've never heard from the Bible before. I've heard it put in a way that could be understood. And With Catholicism, it was just always, it's a mystery, and you'll never really know. So the first Bible study lesson, I was very intrigued. I took notes. I still have my notebook at my house, so I can look back. Every question I had, every single question that popped up in my brain, Brother Mike answered in the next breath. In the next breath, my questions were answered. And I was trying to write them down, and I had to cross them off every time because he answered them with the lessons. In order to obtain salvation, you have to know who the only true God is. And if you don't know, and you misplace all your trust, God doesn't appreciate that. So knowing who the true God is and knowing who Jesus is the most important thing that I learned. My view of the world today is just as it was years ago. It is a crazy mixed up place with a lot of vices. A lot of things that make you feel okay for a few minutes, but nothing to make you feel good indefinitely. The only thing on this earth that's worth it is my relationship with God. Everything else takes a back seat. You should seek Him out. He can help you in any situation that you have. You're feeling low, sad, depressed. God has the answers for you. He has them. He's waiting to give them to you. It's funny, I never thought that I would say that God makes me happy. If you knew me 3 years, 4 years ago, I would have said drinking makes me happy. I would have said partying makes me happy. I would have said less responsibility makes me happy. But today, being in the church, joining in the activities, becoming an officer in the church, bringing my children to church, growing up in the church, my daughter will grow up in now. She's gonna grow up in the church, and she's gonna be awesome. So sometimes people, like, it'll pop up Merry Christmas on the Uber or on a phone call, and people get real quiet. They don't know if I'm a real person sometimes, so I have to say I am a real person. My real name is Mary. You can pick me up. So once we get in the car, they'll be like, Merry Christmas, and I'll be like, and I don't even celebrate Christmas. And then it starts a whole conversation from there. And I share my faith online often, loudly, proudly, daily. I make videos about going to worship service, dressing up for worship service. My social media is completely covered in God. I post Him so much because I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot of time to make up for doing the wrong things. And it's time to do the right thing now. We do share the incmedia videos a lot, especially on my page. I share it a lot. I do a lot of videos. Sometimes it's just a snippet, but we do send, incmedia.org to people out there so they can watch the video. You can watch it while you're cleaning like I do. My life would probably be exactly the same, sad and lonely and depressed, if it wasn't for the Church of Christ. Because the church gave me a whole new meaning, a whole new lease on life. And it taught me what I should be doing and what I should not be doing. What I do to please God is I follow His commands. God says if you love Him that you'll obey His commands. So I love God and I want Him to know that I love Him. So I do my best to obey everything He says.
For our next story, you'll meet Stephen, a successful businessman whose life took a profound turn after an unexpected introduction to the Church of Christ. His journey of faith began on a basketball court where he was refereeing a tournament. But little did he know, this experience would lead him to a community that would transform his life forever.
I was raised by a single mom, and I basically grew up by myself throughout middle school and high school. I basically lived on my own. My mom, with my mom's boyfriend and eventually my stepdad, ended up starting a business, and that business basically took all their time. When I was in high school, they moved to China to literally work with the manufacturers. I was probably a freshman in high school when I realized that I was probably growing up by myself, because during the holidays, A lot of my teammates, a lot of my classmates, they were spending times with their families, and I was home alone for the holidays. So you look at Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, a lot of people are spending time with their, loved ones. So it became really real to me that, I'm all I got. Basketball saved my life so many times because I can sit at a basketball park at a gym, whatever it is. I can sit there for 5, 6, 7 hours and never be bored. While a lot of my friends in that neighborhood grew up in gang violence, some of them are no longer here with us, some of them are in jail, whatever it may be. But basketball literally provided structure for me. It provided a family for me. Like, even during high school, during the holiday seasons, my coach would always invite me over to be with his family during the holidays, and even a lot of my teammates. But growing up, it was pretty lonely. I always believed in a God. I did. I just didn't know how to approach him. During the holidays and when I was spending a lot of time with my friends, a lot of them were Filipino, and they're Catholic. So during high school, I attended Catholic church or mass very often. I don't think you know what you're looking for until you know. What I mean by that is, even when I was baptized Catholic, I would go to mass just to check a box. I wouldn't pay attention when the priest was preaching. I would just be there to be there because that was the thing to do. And my friends were there. So I felt the same way with everywhere I went. My first experience with the church was I was a referee at a Unity Games. So we get into the gym, there's no one in the gym. I get dressed up in the locker room. We come out and it feels like there's probably 5,000 people in there. I built a lot of our relationships through basketball. And so it felt like even though I was a Bible student and I wasn't necessarily a member yet, I was always in contact with, our DMs. And I remember Brother Jason invited me to a worship service. And when I got there, I remember during the hymn singing, I felt the Holy Spirit. I felt this energy ran through me, like my hairs on my arms were sticking up. And I was like, I think this is it. And then I remember listening to the lesson, and I agree with everything the minister said. And then the very next Monday, I started Bible study. And the cool thing was, although I wanted to argue it, but everything was read off the Bible. The proof was in the Bible. And for me, I didn't have to argue with that because that was written, and those were God's words. I remember the toughest lesson for me was the lesson about the Catholic Church, because that was the church that I was technically baptized in. And I remember vividly when we were going through that lesson, it said, you're not allowed to call anybody else the Father except me. And then I was like, wait a second. We call the priest Father, whatever his name is. And I was like, they just broke a rule. And then it was another thing, is like, you're not supposed to wear cloaks and all the stuff that the Catholic priests wear. And I was like, but they do that. And so it was such an eye-opening lesson because it was kind of what I knew for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it was. And to be able to take all that during that time and just throw it away. My mom and I never had a really good relationship growing up. There were many, many times, in our Chinese culture, Asian culture, you're not telling your kids you love them because you don't do that. So I never felt like my mom was my mom. I felt like she was just a guardian. And so I felt like after she went through what she went through, and then I went through what I went through to join the Church of Christ, it felt like we were finally able to connect on a different level. Those last 5 years that I had with her were probably the better years that I had, because my mom passed away with cancer a few years ago. But one of the coolest things that she said to my wife and I was, she was proud of the person I became. And a lot of that had to do with how I was raised inside our church. And I felt like God guided me through all that. And because he did, what can you possibly do to me now? I feel like any test that's put in front of me now, it's a breeze because it would never compare to what already has happened. which is why I feel all the more closer to him now, because I feel like he got me through all that. And I wouldn't have been able to get through all that without God.
Sharing our faith is an act that truly pleases God. According to the scriptures, even if one soul returns to God, thousands of angels in heaven are rejoicing. Meet a remarkable woman whose story of faith began through a neighbor's simple invitation. Megan was captivated by the Bible because she found that it offered more than just opinions. It provided a solid foundation of truth. But her faith was truly put to the test when, while pregnant, she faced a life-threatening situation.
When I was a child, I had actually very strong beliefs about God. I spent a lot of time with my paternal grandparents on the weekends, and one of the things that we would do every weekend was go to our Catholic Mass. I always grew up very religious, reading the Bible, saying a lot of prayers, making sure that we intentionally set the time aside to be able to attend those Masses. I really was seeking a real true feeling of this is the right place for my faith. It was not because someone was telling me to practice this way or because this is the right belief based on what they thought, but what is truly what God wants for me? What does He want my faith to be, and how will He give that to me? I actually met Brother Alan Francisco, who's a part of the church, and he invited me to a Bible study. We actually lived in the same apartment complex. Brother Alan was talking to me about going to church on a regular basis, and one day, just out of nowhere, he actually asked if I wanted to go to Bible study. He said it would be a lot of fun for me to go, that I would really appreciate being around the people. And it was funny because I was actually on my way to the Catholic church when I was invited. So I decided to not go to that and go to the Bible study. Every time I would go to the Bible studies, I had a lot of questions, and every time I would ask the question, the minister would not say, well, this is my answer to it. He would pull the Bible out in front of him and open up, and the Bible would be the one to provide the answers that I was needing. And so the more that happened, the better it felt for me to be a part of this faith, to get the answers that I had been seeking, and not being told, just believe this way because this is what we want you to believe. So really the culture that drew me in was the church culture itself, the Christian culture, loving each other, respecting people as human beings, being there for each other. The church definitely filled a void in my life that I had been seeking throughout my whole life. I wanted to have faith, and I wanted to worship God in the right way, and that started as a little girl on up to even today. And by finding the truth, by finding that true teaching coming from God, feeling the love of His Holy Spirit and having that guidance in my life, I know that I found the right piece that had been missing. A time that my faith was really tested is when I was actually pregnant with my son. I felt there was something wrong within my pregnancy. My boss comes to me and says, your husband and his commander are trying to call you. They need to talk to you right away. And so I called them, and it was the hospital who said, there's something wrong, you need to admit yourself right away. So I left work, drove straight to the hospital and got admitted with a very high blood pressure, with organs that were failing, and I was only 26 weeks pregnant at the time. And so what the doctors were saying is, the hospital that I was at couldn't handle a birth of a child that early. And so they wanted the lights to be down, they wanted people to talk quietly until they could find a hospital room where they could handle a premature birth. But really the difficult time during that was my organs were failing, his organs were failing. We had what you call HELP syndrome, which is like preeclampsia elevated. It's very rare. And so prior to giving birth to my son, they said that there was only a 50% chance that we would survive. And so they said, I'll leave you to make the decision, and they left the room. I remember thinking, God is going to make the decision for me. I don't have to make this decision. And so I told my husband, I was like, get the doctor. And as soon as he got the doctor into the room, the room was filled with 22 different doctors. And Benjamin is our son, and he came out. They immediately intubated him and took him off to the NICU while I was having seizures. So they had the other set of doctors that were on me. Our son, he had monitors for breathing and heart. He had developmental delays as well. And on top of all of that, my husband was getting deployed for 14 months. And so when Benjamin came home from the NICU, 4 days later, my husband left overseas. Through all of this, you know, one of the things that united us as husband and wife and as a family was being able to have our resident worker, our deacons, deaconesses come visit at the hospital. I believe very strongly in the anointing of the oil, so I was consistently getting anointed with the oil. Even the thousands of miles that we were apart, we held our devotional prayers with each other. And now my son is 14 years old, and he's very active with the CWS choir. So I'm very thankful he was able to overcome all those health challenges that he had, and he's stronger for it now. Feeling like I'm not alone is probably one of the best feelings that you could have, because going through this life is difficult. But there's a verse that resonates in me that says there will be no more pain, no more trials, no more tears, no more troubles. And that is the hope that I have in my heart for the day of salvation. And God's the one who promised that to me. So knowing that He's guiding my journey to those no mores is all the more so powerful in my life. God really knows what's best for us. God knows what's best for me, what's best for my family. And by being faithful, holding my prayers, and asking for His help, He always answers that for me. It's very important to never take what God gives you for granted, because He can just as easily take it away from you. In this life, you know, we work hard for the needs for our family, the needs for ourselves, but in an instant, God could take all of that away as well. And I would never want to be on that side of God. I want to always be pleasing Him. I want to make sure that He's happy with the life that I'm living, so that He can continue to give me that peace and give me that happiness that I was seeking for my whole life. Going to church is not a boring life. We have our worship services, we have Bible studies, we also have a lot of fun activities that we all love to take part in. And so we have different activities where we can go out into the community. Some of the ones that I really love is our INC giving events, where we get to go out and just help our fellow man. And the reason I love it is because I'm a social worker. A life of service is really something that's not just about you. It's God's will. He's the one that gave me the ability to give to others. And so my self-care is going to church. My self-care is praying. My self-care is attending different activities, because all of that only came from God. Being a part of the 110th anniversary is very exciting. We are growing and growing, and you hear about the church being in so many different countries. But to me, it's a very exciting time, because this is really the fruition of everyone hearing the words and getting to receive that same promise that I've received, getting to be saved on the day of judgment.
We have one more heartwarming and inspiring story to share with you. Don and Judith Rhodes, a couple whose journey of faith began in an unexpected place, the Philippines. Don was serving in the Navy when he met Judith, who always dreamed of raising God-fearing children. And together they prayed to find a church that would guide them on their spiritual path. But this was something that did not come easy for Donovan.
I always believed in God, and I always had faith in God and Jesus. As I reached my late teens and in my early 20s, when I was on my own, I kind of put that on the back burner. After high school, I actually joined the Navy with two of my other classmates. So I spent almost 4 years in shore duty, and finally the Navy decided to send me to sea duty. And then we're off to the Philippines. The first night we were in the Philippines, I went out in town with my friends, and I just happened to meet my future wife. I fell in love head over heels right away.
I'm Judith Rhodes. I'm the wife of Jonathan Rhodes. When I grew up, I was a Protestant. I was really exposed to church, and we're always active. Donovan is kind of a conservative person, and that's the one I like him very much. It happens he likes to go to church also. I said, if I'm gonna have a partner in life, I want somebody is a God-fearing person.
While we were courting there in the Philippines, we talked and we both confessed that we believe in God and we like to go to church. And so we decided that every Sunday we would go to the chapel on the base and we'd go to worship service. After Judith and I were married, we went to Guam for 2 years. And then we transferred back to Memphis, Tennessee, where I went and did my training in the very beginning of my service.
In Tennessee, we've been looking for church.
To be honest, several were a bit scary for me, so nothing really worked out.
I said, I know, God, you know, I love you. I want to go to the right direction. And so I asked Donovan, I think we have to have our prayer that God will take us to the true church. Especially, you know, when you have kids, you want the kids to know God.
After our tour in Tennessee, we were sent back to Lemoore. Joined a squadron that was, again, getting ready for deployment.
So I met a friend, and she's a Filipina, and she likes to go to Bible study also. I think her name was Elvie, so we call each other sister. She said, "Oh, Sister Judith, I know, are we gonna have a Bible study today?" I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Okay." The afternoon, it happened, I was outside. And then Sister Gail, and she said, "Are you Filipino?" I said, "Yes, I'm a Filipino." And she said, "May I use your phone?" I said, "Go ahead." And she said, "Oh, we're gonna have a Bible study tonight in my house. Would you like to come and join us?" And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry po, I have already other appointments."
Who was Sister Gay? Who was she?
I hadn't met her before. I didn't know that she was Iglesia. That's the first time I met her when she approached me if she can use the phone. So after that, we went to that house. And then when Sister Gail opened the door, it was her. And I said, "Wait a minute. That was you that invited me this afternoon, you know." And she said, "Yeah." "Oh, okay." So here we are in the Bible study. And then that's where I met Brother Ruben Garcia. When he did the Bible study, and they talked to me like, you know, just listen, and then you decide afterwards. Of course, I was searching for the true God, so I want to know about the Iglesia. So I went through the lesson. Of course, Donovan came home from the sea duty. So when he came home, I started sharing to him about the Iglesia. And we ended up arguing. We're fighting now, we're arguing about the lesson. It was the Trinity. Donovan was so hard-headed, he won't go and listen. So it happened that Sister Elby, they're going to have a birthday party. And then we have Bible study with Brother Ruben.
After the Bible study at the birthday party, Judith and I had a quite long discussion. She kept encouraging me to go and attend to the worship service the next day along with the kids.
So that's why I asked Don, just listen. There's nothing wrong to just listen, and open your mind, if it's the true church, we'll go and join, and let's see where God leading us.
She was really trying to talk me into it. So finally, later that evening, I agreed, and the next day, Sunday, we went to our first Iglesia, Cristo worship service.
And then it happened that lesson was like the only church that would be saved is this church.
By the end of the service, I was, to say the least, I was quite upset.
Oh no, I hope he's not offended,
My wife would say I was probably mad. And so at the end of the service, I told my wife to get the kids, to get in our van because we were leaving.
I said, oh God, please be with me in Donovan.
I wasn't going to do this anymore. And we left. The reason I was so upset, it was not the norm for me. It was somewhat shocking, to tell you the truth. It was so foreign, so different for me.
I was keep talking to him. I said, how would you know if it's a true church or not if you don't listen? When we hit the base,
literally several miles down the road, for some reason, I pulled over.
And I said, why are you turning around?
And to this day, I cannot tell you why. And Judith asked me what's going on, and I said, we're going back.
And then we ended up in the chapel.
That is when God really touched my heart, and He opened my eyes to the truth. And the truth has set me free. So I had many questions.
And the one that really hits down is the prophecy in Isaiah.
I ask, why? Here I've been, 35 years old, and you're showing me things in the Bible that no one else showed me. Showed me prophecy that was black and white, plain as day, but no one showed me this. No matter how many different sects or denominations we went to, none came close. The prophecies about the church and the name, the Church of Christ. I had many other questions about how do we know that Brother Felix was the true last messenger of God. Brother Reuben is kind of a historian buff, and so he had all of the material to show me, to back up what the Bible was talking about and the truth that the Bible was telling us. And finally, the year of 1989, my wife and I were baptized into the Church of Christ. I understand that God watches over us even before we really truly know Him. He loves us and He guides us. He brought Judith and I together in the Philippines, and He took us to Lemoore so that we could begin our journey in the Church of Christ.
I'm so grateful and happy to finally God, touch his heart, and we both in the church right now, in the Iglesia, and we will continue to worship God. And that's our goal, to worship Him and to have that everlasting life.
It's not just myself and Judith, it's also our two children and our grandchildren. We want to be an active part in their lives, raising our grandchildren so that And they know God, they love God, and they want to serve God. Even though I have this disability, I can say each and every day I feel Him and that He answers my prayers. He recently answered one of our long-term prayers of being healed. Recently, I found out that my multiple sclerosis has gone dormant, which means it's not attacking my body anymore, which means God's giving me a chance to be healed. So God does answer our prayers when He sees fit. I long to be able to perform my duties once again. I believe God will heal me and allow me to be back once again. To have this precious gift, words cannot describe how happy and the feelings that I feel for being a member of the Church of Christ.
As we conclude today's episode, we reflect on the powerful stories of faith and transformation we've heard. They remind us of what is written in Exodus 33:13. So now, if you are truly pleased with me, I ask you, tell me the things that you intend to do, in order that I will know you better and continue to please you. Many of us seek deeper understanding and a closer relationship with God. Through the journeys we've shared with you today, we see that faith isn't just about belief. It's about actively seeking to know God's will and aligning our lives with it. Whether facing trials like Peter, or finding redemption like Mary, or discovering faith anew like Stephen, all these stories teach us that God's plan unfolds in ways we may not expect. Now, if you relate to these stories and are seeking God's direction in your life, we invite you to contact us at incmedia.org or go to the nearest Iglesia ni Cristo house of worship. May we all continue to seek God's guidance in our lives, striving to know Him better and live in ways that please Him. On behalf of the Stories of Faith team, I'm Brother Ray Del Rosario. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to sharing more stories of faith with you soon. Until next time, God bless and happy 110th anniversary to our brothers and sisters all around the world.